Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Glens Falls Industrial Development Agency Board meeting. This is our meeting for the month of July, and as you see from your notes, we are not going to meet next month, but there may be some special issues that are coming up, and so Jeff has asked if we could do a meeting the last week of July. And I don't think we've set that yet, but hopefully by the end of this week we'll know what that date is. So thank you, Jeff, for working on that. We have a quorum of our members here today. Everyone is here except for Dr. John Cordes is not able to join us today, but otherwise all members are here, and we're joined by our staff and key advisors and consultants, so thank you all. We have the chair report and CEO report is first, and I'll just like to say that one of the things that I do try to do before the meeting is to go and personally take a look at some of our projects that we have underway, and so I have driven by 76 Lawrence and 178 Maple, and I also went out to Tech Meadows, and the work there, and that's more of an LDC project, I think, or I think we have maybe
that's
IDA also. The project that's under construction is going along very nicely, but I have to say I don't think we any longer have a contract with 773. Their property is absolutely beautiful. I can't believe how well taken care of that property is on the edge.
And we have you to thank for that.
Okay,
let's hear it.
and I know that
The shrubbery queen.
Yes. All right, I spent a little time in the garden, but it's, both of those are looking very good. So that is my report. I'm going to turn it right over to Jeff.
Well, actually, I only have project reports, so as far as the chair report, nothing administrative we can deal with at the moment.
Okay, nothing. Okay, very good. Thanks, Jeff. And so let's go to the minutes from our regular meeting from June 11th. Everyone's got a copy of those. Any comments or changes? There being none, is there a motion to approve the minutes as presented?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any nays or abstentions? There being none, the minutes are approved. And let's go right to our financial report. We have the report for 6 months ending June 30th, 2026. And Mark Toomey is here with us today. Mark?
Yeah, we've had just farm depreciation for $293, farm internet expense for $109, 2 legal bills from Fitzgerald, $80 and $976, and 40% of my pay for May for $299.
Okay. And everyone sees our net assets and our balance, so you can see that there as well. Any comments for Mark, or there being none, is there a motion to approve the financial report as presented? Is there a second?
Second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any nays or abstentions? There being none, the motion is approved, the financial report is done. We'll get both the minutes and the financial reports posted. Thank you, Suzanne, for doing that. Our payment of bills for this month, if you take a look at Schedule A, it totals $5,419.89. There's 7 bills. This includes number 7 is for Peter for his work. We're shifting, as we approved last meeting, we're shifting the cost of the streaming from the city of Glens Falls to us, and it's $100, and that's both for IDA and LDC. So I think probably what we'll do is just do this every other month. Maybe we'll shift this to LDC next month, but we'll pay the total this month, okay? Instead of breaking that up into half, all right? Since we always meet together. Let's see. Anything else? Anything that you want to add, Mark, to the bills, or Jeff, anything?
No.
Okay. There being no questions or comments, I believe, on the bills, do we have a motion to approve the payment of those 7 bills?
So moved, yeah.
Second.
Denise.
Denise? Denise, and the second is by somebody else. All in favor?
Aye.
Any nays or abstentions? There being none, the bills are approved and we'll get those signed today, I think. So the live streamed cost discussion.
Mhm. We get.
Well, it was just pertaining to what you just said, which was, you know, we're gonna take over the cost of the filming at this point. And I think the idea of alternating, obviously, the CDC and or urban renewal don't need enough to try and figure out how those would work. Assuming that there's no legal ramifications, Kara, from the IDA and or LDC covering these costs, I think this just seems like a logical way to do it going forward. And I think your thought, Judy, was to alternate it, however, the IDA has sufficient resources, so it's not as much.
Yeah.
We would have to film for the IDA anyway, or
Right.
required, so it wouldn't matter that we charged it off to IDA.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Do you want for that discussion?
Well done.
Thanks.
All right. So any other reports, any other administrative reports?
No.
Okay. So let's go right to project reports and we'll do lofts on Warren first.
Yeah, so this is, you have in your packet, an application or a resolution for, I think it's being to hold a public hearing for the Lofts on Warren. You might recall these are the folks. This is Joe Lucci, who was here last month, right, to talk about the projects, the Lofts on Warren, which is the old car dealership just down the street from us here. If you look, and you can see on Kara's last sheet, that what we're looking at, what do you want to call that, Kara? What's your name for that? Application summary, proposal summary. What we're looking at here is a 10-year pilot with it's a slightly different structure than we've done in the past. You know, I've always been a little bit perplexed, but I've never understood entirely why the previous pilots were always like this period of 0 increase and then 50% increase. It seemed somewhat random. I think there's a need, if you look at this particular one, it's the first 3 years we do hold at the current assessed value. Really that's to provide a couple of things. 1, to build the building, first of all. 2, to fill the building. And 3, in this particular case, they have a Restore New York grant. As those of you who work or have worked in city government know, sometimes grants take a while to get the money back. This, like many state grants, is a reimbursement grant, so they won't get they can't even apply to get the money back until the project is finished and there's a CO issue. So it seemed appropriate to give them a period of time, even above and beyond just completing the building, to try and get the reimbursement for the Restore New York grant. Then what we've looked at is sort of creating a sort of more of a laddered climb back up to full taxation. So you'll see that years 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9, it goes down, or up, depending on how you look at it, 10% until you get into year 11, you'd be at full taxation. So it's, you know, there's a gap, it jumps up, and then it sort of staggers up. And, you know, I think that works particularly for city finances, that it provides, once you've established that sort of base level, it's increasing every year just as your taxes might if you had to increase your taxes. So it seems like a more rational way to do it. So you can run through the cost benefit analysis there. You know, the net benefit to them is about $1.6 million, keeping in mind it's about a $12 million project. So that's a relatively small portion of that. And again, it's prorated over 10 years.
And so, you know, the change in what the pilot amount is going to be, if you change it from, you know, 0% to 50% or something along those lines, just in response to Jeff's comment, it's been done that way in the past related to cash flow of the project. And so we're always carefully monitoring the cash flow of a project. And when a project gets started, oftentimes the first few years, cash flow is very low. And that's why we end up doing these pilots, is to help these projects get started and get moving. And as their cash flow improves, we want the pilot to improve and move towards full taxation. And so that can change. It can change based on a project's need, and so you do carefully kind of follow what the cash flow is. And if you look at we don't have the full application here this month. We had it last month with our documents. You would see in there what the projected cash flow is in that budget. So, and so so we have not had a public meeting on this yet.
No, and that's what we need to schedule.
Yeah,
And so- okay.
Yeah, and this is, go ahead, Karen.
the resolution is just to accept the application and schedule the public hearing. It's
Okay.
not for any formal approval.
Okay. And so we can accept the application, even though they've asked for a 12-year pilot. I don't think, based on the cash flow that's projected, that I would not recommend accepting a 12-year pilot based on what the current numbers are, but let's have a public hearing and go through that in detail. Is that all right with everyone?
I thought our proposal was for 10.
Yeah, our proposal.
Right,
So,
okay, all right.
They've
So they
requested-
requested 12.
Right,
And so we'll do the public hearing, but, yeah, I think we were recommending that it be 10 and not 12.
kind
Okay?
of the max that we
Yeah.
like to look at.
And so, for the public hearing, we can put that draft out as a resolution, for the public to see too, so that they would see that tenure. All right?
Yeah, and this is what I was, if you got the email I sent yesterday, what I was trying to do is, we're not scheduled to have a meeting in August. To try and schedule a special meeting in August is always hard anyway, because many people are on vacation at different times. What I was hoping to do then is, because of the cadence, I think Suzanne has already gone through the timeline, if we were to be able to get something in the paper tomorrow, the 10-day period before the public hearing, we could hold the public hearing anytime the last week of July. Because of schedules, I was looking at Monday or Tuesday. So if we could possibly schedule the public hearing for, well, it sounded like some of the people in this room couldn't even make Monday. So I think we were hoping for Tuesday the 28th.
Tuesday's better for me.
Preferably first thing in the morning if we could.
Yeah.
Totally up to Karen.
Okay, yeah, I think the 28th was better for most people.
Yeah, John had said it was a little tougher, but I think he said, I talked to him yesterday, he said he thought he could make it. So,
Who said that?
John agrees.
Okay. And then, we would need, obviously, the
Yeah, I'll
applicant
have
to be
that.
that.
I'll
Okay,
have
very good. All right, so is there a motion to approve accepting the application and moving forward to a public hearing in consideration of our review?
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any nays or abstentions? Will be none. Motion is carried, and we'll get that. You'll get that in the press.
Yes, we'll get it in the
You'll take
paper
care of
tomorrow.
that. All right, very
Or
good.
report scheduled.
Okay, all right. So then you want to do an update on our other projects? Go-
Yeah,
76?
Yeah, like you, Judy, I checked in with both 76 Lawrence and 178 Maple. I talked to them, well, through email, I communicated with Morris Friedman, the owner. They're doing some infrastructure work inside, they're doing some basement electrical work. It looks like there's not much going on there, but it's actually
There's no one over
indicated
there.
that they have been doing some work there.
Okay.
A lot of it was prelim work.
It must be at midnight when I'm.
Well, yeah, I went by there, I didn't see anything, I heard crickets, I think, but he indicated they are getting moving on that. I also had a chance to walk through 178 Maple with the site manager, and the first and second floors are, basement, I guess, and the first floors are framed out. So the layout's there. They think the commercial space, which is essentially the garage, is going to be available by September 1st. And then they'll have the rest of the building. He said before the end of the year. This is the guy's not trying to commit too much. But he thought sometime, late fall.
Does he have a tenant for the commercial space?
He does not. This was just the manager. I don't know if the owners have anything on that. But it's an unusual space because it's a big open garage with high, it's sort of recessed. And I think they're closing up the garage doors to provide some green space in the front of the building. There's access to the back for like loading and unloading. But yeah, again, he wasn't the expert on that, but I mean, there was some thoughts about how.
And he's got his lights on pretty much all night, and if you drive by, the windows too are open, you can see, the first floor is all framed up, you can see it pretty well from the street.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So I think things are going along there, and as you indicated too, I haven't talked to, the head of Crew Coffee. Sorry. But they are moving right along as well. And
Yeah.
they're gonna have this, the last I heard, they were looking at this done by the fall as well.
Okay.
Last
On
thing
seven,
that-
on 76 Lawrence, John, that, we have deadlines on that in terms of when some of the benefits run out.
Yeah,
Including
you're probably talking
mortgage
specifically things like sales tax.
Sales tax.
rebates.
They've closed up their financing, so they.
That's
so,
done.
yeah,
So
and I
it's
think
the
they had,
sales tax.
sales tax, they had like I wanna say an 18-month or.
They did.
maybe a 12-month period.
Okay.
Some, at least 12.
Okay, all right,
It's been a while, though. They're almost certainly gonna have to come back and revisit it.
okay.
And then finally, on the farm, Karen and I went through and we've revised the RFP. I'm really getting ready to publish that as well, to put that out. I have a list of about 10 people who expressed some interest in it. Obviously, I'm not gonna have anything by, if we have a special meeting by then, but certainly by the time, prior to our September meeting, I'll have some information to you about something we can review for that.
Any
That's all I have
questions for
now.
Jeff or anything? Okay, there being none, is there any other business that we need to take care of? No need for an executive session, I don't believe. So I'll call for the adjournment of the meeting with the, our next meeting is probably going to be a special meeting on July 28th. And following that will be Thursday, September 10th at 8 a.m. for our next regular meeting. Okay. Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second. We are adjourned. Thank you all. Move it over to the mayor.
Thank you, Judy. So we'll open up the Greater Glens Falls Local Development Corporation meeting. We have a quorum, and our first item of business is the minutes. Has everyone had a chance to review the minutes? Would anyone like to make a motion to approve the minutes?
So move.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, minutes are approved. Next, we will go to financial reports. Mark?
Just a few items, 36 ink rent for $8,087, 2 Fitzgerald bills for $1,520, 60% of my pay for May, $448, and then the items going to that downtown facade are Adirondack fabrication for $40,000, Floros Mercantile for $15,709, and KZ's Proba T for $1,679. That's it for June.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Mark? Is there a motion to accept the financial report?
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that is accepted. And then we have our payment of bills below. There was, let's see here, there's Mark Toomey's bill, there's Glens Falls Ventures, 2 bills for that. That is our lease payment. And then we have Fitzgerald, Morris Baker Firth, and Jeff Flag. Any question on the schedule of bills?
Just wondering why we're paying September Venaccio.
Because we're not meeting.
We'll have a meeting in August.
Okay, but we're meeting in September, we can't approve it then?
Well, we
It's
have
due
to
the
first of the
first.
month. I think
It is.
it's due by the first of the month. We can hold withhold payment until
Okay.
September first.
All right. And they're allowing us to have occupancy?
They are.
Okay. Just have to.
Okay. Any other questions on the schedule of bills? Is there a motion to approve the payment of those bills?
So moved.
Is there a second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. One note on the finances, we were able to get Mark set up with Aero Bank to be able
Oh,
to
good.
move our money into ICS accounts. Have you been able to access that, Mark?
Yeah, they go.
Okay, and I believe the preferred exact?
No, well, I mean, it's obviously it fluctuates the amount of money that you can push in, but, you know, when you look at the LDC alone, between the general account, and there's a restricted account, self-restricted, I think it's the SBS account, there's close to $1 million in there, right? So we're getting about, if you figure at the very minimum, 3.5%, right? Just from that, agency alone, you're talking about $35,000, about $3,000 a month just from that, a little more than that. But anyway, so the idea as well. I think we also have one for urban renewal, because urban renewal's got about $100 and something thousand, and while it's not a huge amount of money, it's right down there.
And we never use it, so
Right.
we might as well.
Right.
Make some money.
Yeah.
Right.
So as we approve these lease payments, it's nice to think that passive income through interest will help us with that.
Yeah, and for reasons we'll talk about just here shortly, you know, that's gonna come in handy.
Yeah, so I appreciate Aerobank's help with moving that forward. Okay, so next we'll go to project reports and resolutions.
Yeah, so, as you all know, I think we received a couple of meetings ago, a sort of a plan, a concept plan, that Warren County EDC had, helped the LDC develop. As you know, we've got the remainder of the properties. We managed to, after a long period of time with EDC's help, sell the property to Good Coffee, and of course, you talked about Local 773. But what we're really looking for is perhaps a more holistic view of how the property might be utilized. So you received, as I said, I think it was a couple months ago, copies of the concept plan. I've asked Jim to come in and talk briefly with us about, you know, the plan and maybe how to move forward, because I think the next step in this process would be to get some public feedback, assuming that the board itself is comfortable with the general direction that we're talking about.
Do we have the copies for the members today?
We have Jim.
Yeah, have plenty.
I also have just some summaries that cover some of the high points of what's in there.
I think you're enough, because Judy came prepared with her own copy.
You just take one pass this. Well, thanks for having us. I know you guys have a lot going on this morning, so we'll try to go through this relatively quickly, but this is actually almost 2 years worth of work now. That is covered in both the document and some of the summaries that I put together. There's an executive summary here, but let's just try to net this out. The property has been available for 25 years. I actually pursued it when I was at Just Walker. There have been some other efforts that have made it to some part of the process. But in general, this property has not attracted the intent, which was at the time that the chip fab was built, that the idea that the ecosystem would come up the Northway, the supply chain associated with it. That has not occurred. It really hasn't occurred, not just only in this part, it hasn't occurred anywhere north of Malta. Luther Forest was essentially developed to do that. I think we have to come to grips with this, okay? The original plan is not likely to culminate. So we looked at it and said, well, what should we do? Of course, we were involved in helping bring crew to this because I think it represents an opportunity for a different kind of business maybe than the ones that we originally targeted. Maybe perhaps less industrial, somewhere in the border between light industrial and commercial. I think that demand still exists, but it's intermittent and it's different than what we imagined 25 years ago. We looked at who could help us, and there were a number of firms that could have helped us. We held a procurement event, and one that stood out was being out of Saratoga. You're familiar with them. They've done some work, not only in Saratoga, but other places, that was interesting to us in terms of re-envisioning properties and stepping into today's economy. This study essentially is the culmination of that. The real opportunity here is to essentially align this with the smart growth approaches the state of New York is clearly looking to both fund and use as a guidepost for how economic development and property development will be incented by the state. If you turn on the summary page, you turn this page to the one that has the table. There's quite a bit of material that you can go through in the study itself, but if you were to just net it out, essentially what we did was say, let's imagine for a second that the property developed the way we had thought back in the day. What are likely to be the type of businesses that are there, or what would be their size typically? What kind of employment might they represent? What kind of payroll might that generate? What kind of tax base might that generate? And you can see that in that first column that says original concept. And all of the assumptions that go into that and algorithms that feed that are detailed in the study. But then we looked at it and said, if you simply expanded the ideas here to not only include what is there now, but to also include a more expansive view of including mixed-use development at the same time, and making it available for appropriate housing types, what might that look like? And in that particular case, we believe that we would see more commercial space. We would probably see less industrial space. There are different scenarios of what type of housing would be created, but in a spot that's still generating commercial activity and siting businesses, we believe that somewhere, the sweet spot is somewhere between 200 and 300 different types of housing units that could be incorporated on the property. The thing that jumped out at me was the fact that the tax base is dramatically different for one versus another. Also, that the jobs that are associated with it changed. Why is this? This is because the economy is now no longer office and workplace driven. We have about 20% of our economy that is operating in people's third bedrooms. And we're always trying to better understand this, but the idea of jobs associated with only large-scale factories, and I am somebody who spent my life in them, is no longer the whole picture. And when you look at some optimal combination of what I would consider to be modestly employed businesses like Crew, where they're doing roasting and canning and could potentially expand into other things as well there, it tends to be 10, 12, maybe less than 20 people. If you put up a mixed-use building and there's anywhere near the demographic activity that we already see in existing housing units in Glens Falls and in Warren County, we would generate more jobs in a mixed-use building than we would if that was just an office. It took me a long time to get my head around it. And all the basis of that is in the study. But not only that, but the economics of what goes on there is better. The median income, the median age, they all align with the objectives that we have, which is to try to raise the standard of living, try to raise the incomes, and to reduce or at least stabilize our demographics here. In addition, if we only had this be commercial and industrial property, we would generate no additional opportunity for young people and young families. In this particular case, there is a clear benefit of the fact that we could generate students that would accrue to the Glens Falls schools 2 blocks away. It sits in an area that is essentially never been conceived of that because it wasn't thought that there would be residential there, but what borders it on the Western Avenue side essentially is part of the Glens Falls School District, even though it sits within the boundaries of Queensbury. Another thing that we looked at is how could we make this an extension of the public parks and green spaces. And you'll see in the proposal that really that's what this entire thing is based around. There's a wetlands that runs right through the middle of the property, and it makes it difficult for us to site any large-scale operations there. We can't really accrue more than 5 or 6 acres contiguously without it affecting this wetlands that runs through. So rather than see that as a limitation, we turned to BN and said, how would we turn that into an asset? We'd essentially turn it into a greenway. And one of the concepts for housing is to put a type of housing that we don't have a lot of opportunity for in Glens Falls, which is market rate. You can think of that as condos and townhomes that have an appropriate setting. That fits a market need, may not be the only market need. We clearly have the need for more what we would consider to be market and affordable housing, and we clearly have a need for entry-level housing for people who are attempting to buy into their first home. All of those housing types, at least conceptually, are included in this study. if you net all this out, the idea of expanding the use case here and turning this over to developers to give back to us proposals that would suggest how would we do all of these things at the same time, we believe will net 3 to 4 times a greater investment than the original strategy. It will clearly represent a much larger tax base. We believe as much as 4 times more. It will generate more jobs. It will generate higher payrolls. And it will create a trail and recreation asset we don't currently have, but will act as a connector between us and the recreation assets of Queensbury. Think of the strategic location. It's literally right next to not only Morris Park, Old Veterans Park, but it is easily accessible to the riverfront, and it is just on the other side of the Northway to the trail network that Queensbury has. You could imagine somebody coming here, parking their car there, and accessing the bike trail or accessing Coles Woods by starting here. All of these things give us an opportunity to do something that we've never really thought about before. I was skittish about this, to be honest. I mean, this doesn't feel like what an economic development organization is supposed to do, is to take property and maybe make it less industrial. But we also have to be realistic. Any industrial operation we would put there is likely going to be a matter of public debate about whether or not they want to receive it. We've lived through all of that. You know, FW Webb on a lot that was zoned for what they wanted still went through a significant public dialogue process, and the public wasn't very excited about it. I think we have to be realistic about, do we think that's going to happen there? I'm certain it's going to happen there. If somebody came to me and said, I'd like to take all 25 acres, I'd like to bring in a lot of trucks and a lot of noise and a lot of light, I think we could imagine the fact that there would be people who would object to that. I think what we should do is go out to the public and say, here's our opportunities, our options. Which of these makes the most sense? I don't think the public should make the decision, but I definitely feel like we should give them the opportunity to weigh in. I think all of us got to figure out what to do with the combination of the idea, whatever public input we get, and the emerging economy that we're all trying to figure out how to sit in. I'm suggesting that the next step would be for us to host a series of public engagements as soon as later this summer, probably 2 or 3, where we would go through the history of the property, the ideas that, you know, the potential of what we could or couldn't do, and also engage people in receiving their feedback. And I wanted to know whether or not you are receptive to that, because this is your property. We are your agent.
So also, just to add to that, Jim did present to the Common Council's Planning and Development Committee, and they had a good opportunity to hear this report. Allison and I, who's our planning and zoning director, have also discussed that from the city's perspective, the next step would be a public engagement session to present this as one, but not the only option, and see what the community thinks. So we're on board with that. I would ask, I guess, if you would collaborate with our planning and zoning department for that public engagement. But
I think I'd just like to, I'm probably the only person here who was part of that effort 25 years ago, and I was served on that committee, you too, Mary and me. And so, the wetland, one of the reasons why we moved in that direction, Jim, is because the wetland that's connected to the lot to the southwest was a major brownfield, probably the most major brownfield in this part of the community is our experience. I had never, in my 45, 50 years of working in development, seen a brownfield as involved in resolving that brownfield as that was. And so there was a great deal of concern at the time that that wetland was going to have some connectivity to that brownfield, and that there would need to be further study on that. And so there was concern about having housing in that area, given the connection to the brownfield. And so did BN take into consideration that? Take into consideration the connection to that major brownfield, and have they looked at that? And so I'm in favor too of a public hearing, but I think the public needs to know more about that brownfield, and maybe an update needs to be done to make certain that that wetland no longer has any brownfield contamination in it.
Well, let's take that one at a time. The DEC's continue to monitor that site for the last 20+ years. They've downgraded it formally. I think we can bring all that to the public. There are still, there will always be issues that are associated with the appropriate land use and buffers. But that site is no longer in the same range as what Judy's talking about at the inception. The development of crew also is a validation that DEC is prepared to allow appropriate development on that site, because not only to go through seeker, but DEC's take on both the wetlands and the buffers were part of that whole process. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't talk about all of this, but it has effectively been mitigated to a different stage of land use classification by DEC. And the potential to do this exists. What it may involve in terms of buffers, what it may involve in terms of ongoing monitoring would be part of the dialogue that we would get into. I want to make sure that everybody understands that our goal here is to take this as the last big productive piece of property that Glens Falls has and create the most value for it. Some of that's in tax base, some of that's in residents, some of that's in jobs, some of that's in amenities. I think right now it is generating almost none of that. And I can tell you why. There were more than 50 projects the state of New York pushed out as formal economic development projects last year, where we had the opportunity to put sites in and try to be a part of a site selection process. There were only 3 of the 50 that were even eligible for this site, because the general need for sites now is much larger than this entire parcel. 50+ acres, enormous power, enormous water and wastewater, the opportunity to site alternate energy like solar on site. All of those things become a challenge in this particular site.
Yeah, I was just gonna say too, you might recall, the city had been looking at some, recently, at solar projects on the landfill and the adjacent site you're talking about, which is the one right next to the furniture warehouse. They did some they did some testing then and found no particular problems. In fact, I think the DEC is going to end up trying to still put a project on there on their own, since they own the property. Keep in mind too that the LDC, way back when, did put in water and sewer, right? There's all the infrastructure in there. So there's no, as typically is the case in a lot of Queensbury, there's a lot of groundwater concerns just because people have wells and septic systems. None of that would be the case here. So something else that's been mitigated.
So at this point, does everyone feel comfortable with the next step being a public engagement session to present this and get input?
Yes.
As long as you add to the report the stuff about the
The
broker.
percentage of residential here, does that present a problem for us?
So what I'm suggesting is, maybe we'll socialize dates with Allison, but I'm suggesting at least 2 to make sure that we give people ample opportunity. If there's enough need, we do more. I want to make sure that we get you the voice that you're after to help make a good decision, but our goal would be to try to bring some of this to decision point, say by the end of the calendar year. I do know that there are developers that are chomping at the bit to propose ideas to us that would fit inside this model. But it doesn't make sense to let them do that until we've had the opportunity for the public to decide that they want to receive it.
Okay, so why don't you and Allison coordinate dates and we can go from there? Thank you for joining us today. Our next item is to discuss 36 Inc. And Kara, I'll turn to you for that because we may need to go into executive session.
Yeah, do you want to, just go right into it now? Go into executive?
I think so, unless there's any other business anyone has that wraps up their agenda. Okay.
So there will be no action taken after, but we'll be going into executive session and or closed attorney-client privilege session pursuant to open meetings law to discuss the disposition of real property that cannot be discussed publicly and to get attorney and legal advice on the proposal.
Do you wanna go off the film?
Yeah,
Yeah.
after somebody makes the motion to do it.
Oh,
I'm big